Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 68 today for the Mexican Grand Prix in Season 4. If you guys did miss the previous one at the Canadian Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. A quite controversial one on the Saturday in qualifying and a wet and wild time on Sunday for the Grand Prix. And a crucial one for us, getting a second, third place in a row to take the lead of the Drivers' Championship, whilst the previous leader, Lando Norris, was way down in 9th place. It was a massive chance for it to be blown wide open, and it wasn't even me that benefited as well. Albon as well got right back into it. He's now level on points with the McLaren driver. At one point, I really thought Albon was completely out of the championship fight. He had a couple of dismal races before the Canadian GP, but now he's right back in it, level on points with Lando, a couple of points behind Sebastian Vettel, and then Felipe Drogovic is maybe an outside chance in P5 with only 3 rounds to go. So it is very much crunch time now in this season. That consistency following that very unfortunate DNF at Imola has meant we're in the lead of the championship, but you can really see now, if it wasn't for those 4 DNFs we've had this season for 4 different engine failures, we may have been running away with this entire championship. The car has been really that good, which is why it's been so frustrating not to be able to showcase how good that car has been. But of course, we're still bringing reliability upgrades to make sure that this car can shine and continue to shine all the way to the end of the season. We've now had back-to-back races where we've finished the race, which sounds like a pretty stupid sentence to say, but to be honest, I've been burned so badly from those 3 DNFs in a row, winning Monza, then having the failure at Imola. You know, you can't be too careful, which is why you just saw there we repurchased one of the reliability upgrades that did actually fail on us last episode, and so we've got 2 new reliability upgrades coming to the car into this race weekend, and we've had to kind of have that fine balance, haven't we, in the last couple episodes of obviously bringing forward upgrades still to try and keep up pace, because these AI around us, the AI teams, they have been upgrading so quickly. You know, our sister team, Audi Sport, even McLaren have come back into it, Mercedes, Red Bull as well, to the point where it's getting so tight on the R&D chart. But it looks like our own supplier, Audi themselves, have also been doing their own work on the reliability side of things, because we have a supplier upgrade that has arrived for general wear. It's the first time they've done it this season. Probably a bit overdue, to be honest, Audi. I could have used this maybe before those 3 DNFs in a row, but it's come eventually, and so we have a 3rd, technically, upgrade coming to the car in terms of durability. So that should see us through to the end of the season. 3 rounds to go. And now, because of these 3 reliability upgrades, I'm now confident about switching back to focusing on some tangible performance upgrades. I've got my eye on that final aerodynamics upgrade on the drag reduction side of things, which should make this car even quicker in a straight line, which is crazy to think, because our car very much is a rocket ship in a straight line. You know, as much as I've been annoyed at the reliability side of things from Audi and the engine in the back of our car, in terms of pure engine power and the speed of it, it's worked out really well. And as I've said many times, when the car's working, this thing is so bloody quick. But as I mentioned, the AI teams have also been absolutely on it with their boosted R&D. Of course, we've been slower to upgrade because of our reduced R&D, and so they've caught us up, and you can see at the top end of this grid, things are getting so tight that pretty much you could count Audi Sport, ourselves, McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes. 5 different teams pretty much overlapping each other on the R&D chart now. You know, mere tiny pixels of difference there. So I think technically we're the 4th best team on the grid, only just, as Audi Sport and McLaren are just ahead of us. Haas still retain their top spot, but now you can see all of us have bridged that gap, so their dominance may not be so guaranteed, and we now may be seeing other teams giving them a bit more of a challenge. But even, you know, the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes have kept up pace. You can see even Renault, Andretti down below, they're making huge strides. So we've not had an R&D reset or any email about a reset into Season 5. So next season, we could very much get to near enough a whole grid of maxed out cars, including our own and the AI teams, which could be quite an exciting prospect. But yeah, the AI teams have really showed what they can do with the boosted R&D to catch us up, which, you know, makes it even more annoying, you know, when I was saying about, you know, those 3 engine failures, those races where we were very, very quick in comparison to the others. We didn't make the most of it. The engine didn't allow us to make the most of it, and now we're in a situation where very much legitimately we could see the McLarens, you know, our sister team, Red Bull and Mercedes, you know, out qualifying us, getting in the mixer, which makes things even more interesting now going to these last 3 rounds where, you know, the top 10, I really can't even guess or predict who could be in it. But someone who's not even going to get the chance to get into the top 10 anymore following this season is going to be Sergio Perez, because he has announced his retirement from Formula 1. That's going to leave a hole in the new branded Renault team alongside Verstappen. I mean, who knows if Verstappen even stays, because he moved there to maybe get a more competitive car. And Renault, they started off quite quick at the start of the season, but they really did not keep pace in upgrades. They're only now just bringing some good upgrades to actually catch up the rest of us. So yeah, that's going to be quite interesting to see if there's a domino effect, maybe with driver transfers, with Perez having a gap there in that team. But then also, I'm assuming an AI driver of Verstappen's caliber, obviously a 2-time champion in this alternate F1 universe of ours, winning Season 1, I'm sure there's a good chance he may leave that team for a better one. And so who goes the other way? You know, obviously only time will tell into Season 5. But we're now going into the race weekend then for the Mexican GP. One of my favorite races, actually. It's a really, really good one on the game. In real life, it's a bit hit and miss sometimes with how the race can pan out, but I think in the game, because of the slipstream levels you have, in comparison to real life, it's a bit ridiculous on the straights. You're always going to get moves left, right, and centre, and always makes it quite interesting. And we've also got maybe some rain in the air to make things a bit interesting around this race weekend later today on the Saturday in qualifying. The Q1 has come and gone, and it's a formality for us to get through into the next session, along with Sebastian Vettel showing, you know, that momentum and focus he's got despite that mistake at the end of Canada. That doesn't seem to be affecting him too much, and he's right up there. Drogovic, though, also the McLarens, yeah, you can see that sprinkling of the top 10. You know, you got Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes in there. So it is going to be quite an interesting one into the next session, Q2, who's actually going to make the cut, because there will be some big names and some big teams disappointed either way, because as I said in Montreal, you know, there's basically too many teams going for only 10 spaces. So there's inevitably going to be some shock exits, which makes it quite exciting, of course. But for us, I think we're quite confident, you know, both of us being in the top 3 in Q1. The car we know is good in a straight line, and that is going to pay dividends here around this circuit on this long main straight. And so into Q2, we set our one and only flying lap on our one and only soft tyre in this session, going top, and that will be enough to get us through, along with Drogovic, who tops the session. Our other rival, Lando Norris, in 3rd place, Vettel in 4th. I guess all 4 of us are rivals mathematically, but our 5th rival, Alexander Albon, and his teammate Tsunoda, they've been left the team that are the most disappointed. Both Red Bulls out in Q2. That is a howler for them. That's shocking stuff. They'll be so disappointed with that, as both Mercs, both McLarens, and Audi Sport guys make it in, along with the second ass of Robert Schwartzman in P7. So it means there's no room for either Red Bull car. So that's going to be quite disappointing for them, despite bringing upgrades into this one. So our Red Bull and Albon going back to that pre-Canada kind of form, where they're just not making the most of what is still a very quick car in that Red Bull team. They've just really not made the most of it. They were top of the R&D chart for a good part of half this first part of the season. The fact that Albon's struggling and he's not got a cushion to try and control at this point in the season is pretty poor form from him and from Red Bull, really. They really did not make the most of it. I guess in the same way we didn't make the most of it when we had those 3 engine failures. But now we're into a doom and gloomy Q3 session, very overcast, and the rain is on the way. We saw in the indicator in the garage, so I've gone straight out there to go for my flying lap. Sebastian Vettel has also joined me. So it's another Singapore situation, like in Singapore, where both me and him have decided to go out early, and the rest of them have left it a bit too late here. And a very good decision for us to do that, because on our flying lap, in the middle of Sector 2, you can see the rain has started to fall. So it's literally a copycat situation in Singapore, where Vettel is going to set a time with the track being at its best. I'm just behind him, but the rain has started to fall as we enter the last sector, so we'll lose a bit of pace as the track becomes slippery. And then the cars behind me, well, they may not be able to match us at all. Depends. I think we've got one of the sister Audi sport cars just behind us, but we go second place behind Vettel, so he will be ahead of us for the starting grid. Carlos Sainz, though, actually does out-qualify me, our old teammate, into P2, despite having probably a more damp circuit behind. He does very well indeed, but the rest of them, bar Drogovic, really get caught out in the rain. But Drogovic manages to wrestle that Haas up into third place to get on the second row. But Sebastian Vettel, just like in Singapore, on the front row, on pole position this time though, obviously the session, as obviously the rain just came down harder and harder. So you can see, I mean, the lap times from Gasly so off the pace in P10 then. So really paid dividends for myself and Sebastian to go out early then. So it's going to be himself on pole position, our old teammate Sainz in the Audi sport car in second place on the front row, Drogovic third, myself fourth. That's good for us, at least ahead of Lando Norris and obviously way ahead of Alexander Albon. But we do need to keep an eye out on Vettel and Drogovic, because if they were, either of them, if they were to win another race and then, let's say, get a second place, 2 times over at Saudi Arabia and then Abu Dhabi, they could well be in there and be taking the title away from us. So, we really need to not underestimate our teammate Vettel. We saw how good he was last season, and we also need to not underestimate Felipe Drogovic in that very quick Haas car. Now, because of that, ahead of this session, this is actually pre-qualifying, I was debating what engine components we take, because my internal combustion engines, 3 of them are over 50% worn. The 4th column is at 36%. The rest of the components, I've got enough in the pool that I think we should be fine to the end of the season. So you can see with the turbocharger, control electronics, both motor generators and the gearbox, we've got enough in the pool of engine components to probably see it out to the end of the season. But that internal combustion engine, we've got 3 of them over 50%, 1 of them at 36. Now that 36% one, that may get to 50% by the time we get to Abu Dhabi. So I was tempted to take an engine penalty going into this qualifying in Mexico. I'm now happy I've not, considering Vettel and Drogovic have out-qualified us. So I'm quite happy that we didn't, and I'm not going to now take an extra internal combustion engine unit, because I want to be up here, because I need to try and ensure I can keep Vettel and Drogovic at bay, try and overtake them, and try and limit the damage that they might have on me in the championship, because we like I said, we just can't underestimate their presence, their speed and consistency. So kind of happy I didn't take the penalty in hindsight before qualifying, and I'm not going to now going to Sunday. That might well mean we have a worn internal combustion engine into Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, but we'll kind of take it as we come there and decide what we do there at those 2 respective circuits. But right now I'm committed to take the fight to Drogovic and Vettel toe-to-toe on the circuit. No penalty involved for us on the grid. Let's go and try and get a race win if we can. Clearly the car has pace for pole position, so why not? Let's go for the race win. Let's go to Sunday.
Welcome to Mexico City, the most popular city in North America, and home, of course, to the Mexico City Grand Prix. It's a sellout crowd as usual here at one of the shortest circuits on the Formula One calendar. And who, I wonder, will they be cheering on the top step of today's podium? The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, 2.6 miles of track that allows drivers to take full advantage of their cars, reaching speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, and providing lots of opportunities for overtaking. The circuit features 17 corners, 10 to the right, and the remaining 7 going to the left. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Sebastian Vettel has a clear track ahead of him today as he starts in pole position, and a very happy Carlos Sainz will start second. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Drogovic, the owner driver, Lando Norris and Bottas, Russell, Leclerc, Schwartzman and Pierre Gasly, Verstappen, Albon, Yuki Tsunoda and Perez, Fernando Alonso, Mick Schumacher, Kevin Magnussen and Esteban Ocon, Oscar Piastri, Stroll, Théo Pourchaire. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Liam Lawson. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So it looks like none of us in the top 5 of the championship have taken any penalties now for this race, so I'm kind of doubly happy about not taking one ourselves, because you never know. Into the last 2 races, that generally also, we've seen a pattern of AI. They like to seem to just do those penalties right at the end of the season sometimes. So there might be a chance, if we have to take a penalty ourselves, there might be a chance it overlaps with one of their penalties into Saudi Arabia, into Abu Dhabi, the last 2 rounds. And so we may as well kind of go toe-to-toe with them here, none of us having penalties, if you see what I mean, to try and limit the damage, try and get some points off them if we can, because I think we can. Clearly, the car has pace for pole, like I said, so we're able to go. And also, like I said, because of the car so good in a straight line, this circuit is going to actually play into our car's strengths so much. I mean, down to turn 1, I reckon we have a good chance of actually attacking all 3 of the cars ahead of us, Drogovic, Sainz and Vettel. So let's go for it. We've opted to go for the soft compound of tyre along with Lando Norris, and I believe also Alexander Albon outside the top 10 is also on the soft tyres. Interesting difference there with Vettel and Drogovic not going for that. They're going for medium, so there is either a 1-stop from medium to hards or a 2-stop not using the hard tyres at all and just going soft, medium, medium. I think that may be the better way for us to go here. There's no rain on the way, even though it looks very overcast. There's no rain on the way this Sunday, so I think we genuinely have enough out-and-out speed to make a 2-stop work, cut through the traffic like a hot knife through butter and make it work. And it also means we don't have to, worry about being horrendously slow on the hard compound, worry about tyre wear at the end of the race, which has been an issue sometimes around Mexico. So we're just going all guns blazing, but also at the same time just playing a bit of chess and matching Lando and Albon with their strategies and covering them off, the 2 that are nearest to us in the championship points-wise. Because it is that point of the season, it is crunch time, and we are now thinking about the championship as we go to 5 red lights, 3 rounds to go. The Mexican Grand Prix is underway. It's a great launch, of course, on a softer compound tyre compared to the cars ahead of us. We're right up the gearbox of Carlos Sainz. We pull out the slipstream, and now barreling down into turn 1. Vettel goes defensive. We're going to get boxed in a little bit into turn 1. We've got the inside line. Oh, the McLaren's come out of nowhere. We've been hit to the rear. Schwartzman smashed into our rear wing, and just like in Austria, we've got major rear wing damage. The safety car is out because Schwartzman is completely out of the Grand Prix as his car got absolutely destroyed on our rear end. But what on earth was that McLaren doing of, I think, our championship rival, Lando Norris? Let's look at a replay then. We did so well on the start initially. Great run to turn 1. Of course, Vettel will go defensive. We're boxed in, but we've got a nice inside line. And then look at the McLaren, just literally out of nowhere. I had no clue a car was going to come through the inside. You wouldn't think so. I had it covered off, but he decided other things, and he just comes from so far back, cuts the curb, and then that is the contact with our rear wing that gives us major rear wing damage. Schwartzman's completely out of the Grand Prix. I'm lucky myself not to be out, to be honest, but what is that? What is that from Lando Norris in the McLaren? Cuts across the grass, a bit of the sausage curb, comes from so far back, and just causes all the kind of incident basically, because we get wedged in, and it's the lack of momentum I had after turn 1 that just saw me stationary enough where Schwartzman just barreled into us. This is the onboard from Bottas. You can see, look at the right hand side. That just was never going to work in my opinion from the McLaren. He was trying to make it almost 4 wide into turn 1 whilst I had the most inside line ever. And then here's another look at that Schwartzman incident. You know, basically you can see my car lost all momentum being sandwiched in with Sainz and the McLaren. And that basically just meant I was stationary almost coming out of turn 1. And Schwartzman, well, I don't know what he's really doing. He probably should have done better. Just accelerates into us, smashes into our rear wing. He's out. And I've got now horrendous damage. So, in hindsight, maybe we should have taken an engine penalty. That internal combustion engine penalty. Because we're going to be at the back of the grid anyway now. Under the safety car, we're coming in for not only front wing damage, but, well, I can't change the rear wing. So, we're coming in for the front wing damage and a change of tyres onto mediums, because we'll now go medium to the end of the Grand Prix, which still might work out for us, to be fair, because pitting under the safety car gives us that free pit stop, and now we can still avoid the hard tyres and just have some great speed on mediums. But the massive cloud over our head now is that rear wing damage. You remember in the Austria sprint how frustrating that was. Every high-speed corner, the rear end's going to step out a bit, and now we've got to here at Mexico for not just a sprint race, a full, a whole another 34 laps ahead of us of this entire Grand Prix. So this may just be the biggest fight of our lives and might end up being, well, a very difficult Grand Prix, because you can see there, I mean, I know the tyres were cold, but there is literally no rear end downforce going on there, just a bit too quick into the left-hander. So every corner now, we're going to have to make sure we brake in an absolute straight line, slow it down before we even try and turn in, because otherwise there's basically no balance from rear to front. At least for us, I think mostly that half spin was more about the tyres just being ice cold, to be fair, and we saw at Austria there was a little bit of downforce still being produced when you have the rear wing being, yellow to orange on the heads-up display, but you'll see probably the little twitches of oversteer as we go on through the rest of this race. One thing that is for certain, though, our car is still a rocket ship in a straight line, and technically should be even better now with a lack of drag on the rear. But meanwhile, up ahead, Lando Norris, the man who caused maybe most of this chaos, has just overtaken Vettel into turn 1. The McLaren leads the way in Mexico from Vettel to Drogovic. So after all of that, there's seemingly no karma going on in this race, because he's into the lead now and has a chance of maybe going on to win this thing. Unbelievable, as we overtake Liam Lawson then up into P17. Of course, we do have so much pace over a lot of these cars up till about, Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull, so we should be able to actually make some progress, and that's why I'm keeping the car out there. I'm not retiring it. I think we can still get maybe a point or two if we're lucky out of this, and just limit the damage of potentially what this man might get if he wins the race. Obviously, we've got Vettel in second place, Drogovic, so 3 of the people in the top 5 in the championship are in the top 3 spots right now, so we need to try and stay in this race and hope that, fighting like this maybe with Leclerc and Gasly could hold up cars enough that we can catch them up, limit the damage, and get 1 or 2 points of theirs. Gasly and Leclerc are really going for it in the 2 chrome cars, the silver arrow versus the silver chrome of Vodafone. McLaren, Mercedes into turn 1. Maybe Verstappen joins them, or it might be Tsunoda. Tsunoda makes it 3 wide, dives down the inside, and you can see up the road that is a massive gaggle of cars all losing time to each other, and we are gaining now on the cars ahead still, keeping up with them, as we now see Vettel defending Drogovic, but Drogovic gets up into P2. The Brazilian makes the pass into second place, as we have a go at Piastri, and himself, he has a go at Pourchaire. So we make a double overtake in the end of it, round the outside rather than the inside of anyone on Pourchaire and Piastri. But being in the middle of this is giving me the fear, because there's just so many cars that are desperate to try and get positions, try and, scramble for those last points, and I'm here trying to cut through them with a broken rear wing. And you can see, look at this, sector 2, I'm having to lift off so much just to make sure the rear end doesn't step out, because there is no cohesion of the front and rear right now. As soon as I turn in too quickly, the rear's going to go, so I have to constantly try and go slow enough for there to be enough grip on the rear end, and that's actually bringing back into play the Ferrari, the Porsche Williams, Renault, all these cars that should be so much slower in Sector 2. They're now pretty much the same pace as me. The only advantage I have is still in Sector 1, I guess, in Sector 3 right at the end, that slingshot down the main straight, because we've still got the engine power, and as I said, technically, if this was real life, you'd have less drag on the rear end, but if this was real life, there would probably be some damage visible on the rear end. Unfortunately, the game doesn't ever display any damage on the rear end, visually speaking, and we can actually still go on in this race. So we're going to make the most of that fact and get up into P11 now as we overtake Mick Schumacher, him with a penalty, and Alonso as well up ahead. So already one place off P10, so there is some point to still stay in this race. And meanwhile, up the road, all my championship rivals, apart from Albon, I guess, are having a go at each other, because Drogovic now is looking to take the lead of this race off the McLaren. Lando really aggressive into turn 1, get the elbows out again into the next right-hander. Drogovic, though, remains firm, and the Repsol Haas is going to power through for P1. The McLaren, I think, is going to have to slot in behind. Yep. And so Lando now down to P2. Drogovic leads the way. Vettel third, just keeping behind and maybe just waiting patiently for the right time to make a move. But remember, Lando's on soft tyres, so all those other guys on mediums, eventually, you know, I would say around this lap to the next couple of laps, Lando should be feeling some tyre wear, and so all those medium tyre runners are going to look a bit quicker as we go on through the next couple of laps, as eventually that McLaren will come in for a pit stop. Of course, remember, myself and Albon have made pit stops already. He got caught up in that incident at turn 1, lap 1, so both myself and him are trying to fight back through this, as now we see Sebastian Vettel overtaking the McLaren. So those soft tyres for Lando are really wearing out, and so it's Drogovic from Vettel now, as we also make a move into turn 1 on Fernando Alonso, up into the top 10 for the first time since lap 1. But up ahead now, I think that might be a very good chance there for Sebastian Vettel to have a go at Drogovic and retake the lead of this entire race. Of course, he was on pole position. He's now got past that slower car on the softs, the McLaren, both McLarens. Gasly struggling in P7 there, I think. So I think all those cars in between those two McLarens will be making some moves maybe, but Drogovic has already got a commanding 2.8 second gap to Vettel, so he is looking supremely quick out there. But look how slow the McLaren is, already 1 second lost to Vettel. Sainz now going for a move down the inside of the stadium section. It's surely going to be time for the McLaren to come in for his first of 2 stops today. It looks like those soft tyres have really not lasted long, so, you know, to be fair, we might have actually been in trouble as well if we actually had a clean lap 1. We might have been struggling just like Lando is right now at the moment, so maybe, I don't know, maybe pitting early under the safety car might end up getting us ahead of Lando after all of this, even with the rear wing damage. We'll have to see the long-term picture, but at the moment, it looks like anyone on softs is struggling, as the Audi Sport Cars, our sister team, look to be working very well indeed. Bottas getting ahead of Russell, and now will look to chase after and keep up with his teammate Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, behind Leclerc, we have got him in our sights, and we are gaining on him. And the thing is, with all the cars up ahead fighting so much, we are gaining on them. Even though we're losing time in Sector 2, we're gaining enough in Sector 1 whilst this is happening, whilst these guys are going side by side and going so slow through the first 2-3 turns. We are gaining time there in a straight line whilst we're kind of taking it easy and taking the racing line. So we are actually now only a couple of seconds off this entire pack, as now Sainz is up to 3rd and the McLaren is down to P4, could be P5. They've got to come in. Surely he's just a sitting duck. They're just destroying Lando's entire race, McLaren are, by not coming in any earlier. These soft tyres have clearly gone off the cliff, and the medium compound is the better race tyre, as it may now be an Audi 234 by the end of Sector 1. I think it will be, as Bottas gets up into P4. So he may have done some damage to my race on lap 1, but now all my fellow Audi drivers are doing some damage to his race, giving some waft of dirty air and overtaking him as he just goes through and down the pack Maybe Russell's up next, and you can see now, look at this, we've joined the train along with Leclerc and Alonso, kind of showing you in Sector 2, you'll see in this aerial shot how much slower we are, and that rear end all constantly wobbling away. So Leclerc and Alonso, even though I did overtake them in Sector 1 very easily, they're actually keeping up with me in Sector 2, and so I'm effectively dragging them along into this fight, because we're now right behind Yuki Tsunoda, who is in a train of then Gasly, Russell, and Lando Norris up ahead. So this could get quite awkward. I could actually meet Lando Norris potentially at some point, unless he's going to pit now. Does he? No, he doesn't. He still doesn't come in. What is going on with McLaren? What is this strategy for them today? They're just losing positions and time to no end, because now here comes Russell in the first of the two Mercedes. Maybe that might try and overtake him as we try and have a go now at Tsunoda behind, but there goes Russell through on the inside of turn 2 up into P5. The McLaren tries to fight him, but he just doesn't have the tyre grip. We couldn't get the move done on Tsunoda into turn 1, but now we'll have a go with DRS. Tsunoda may try to go down the inside of Gasly. Tsunoda locks up and hits Lando Norris. Oh, bit of contact there. Is that damage for the McLaren? Tsunoda, I tried to overtake him. He instead tried to overtake 2 cars himself, and he might have just dealt some damage to our championship rival, but my rear end is squirming away, and Gasly sends one down the inside, gets the elbow out, and now Leclerc has waved himself past. And in these situations, I have to get out of that, otherwise that would have been a collision into the rear end of Leclerc. In these situations, this is where my rear wing damage is not helping me. When we're going wheel to wheel, you've got all this dirty air moving about. I'm trying to move the car left to right. Not going to work. I need smooth movements, which is why we're catching these cars in clean air. But then as soon as I get close to them, I start to lose a bit of pace. But Norris is finally in. Tsunoda's in, though. And I think that's actually because he himself got some damage in that collision. So we gained 1 free position technically on the Red Bull car. Lando's in for his 2 stop. He's now behind us. We both got 1 stop to make. So in all of this, I actually might end up ahead of him by the end of this race, ironically, if I can keep this car going on the black stuff, basically, because it's proving very difficult now as the tyre wear starts to kick in for my medium tyres. So I'm also guessing maybe what's happened here is the fresh mediums, they were kind of negating a bit of downforce loss on the rear end. It's the same way where we've seen before, where you get floor damage, and initially if you're on new tyres, you don't notice it, but as the stint goes on, you notice it more. So we're now down 2 positions. Albon and Alonso both ahead of me. Albon obviously one of my championship rivals, so that's a bit unfortunate, but we're still in the points. We're still trying to make the most of this race, and we'll keep going.
Stand by. We see a problem our end.
No, Mark. No, nothing good has ever followed this team radio for us this season. Please, this once, tell me this is just an ERS issue, some kind of fuel issue, because we're already down. We've already got no rear wing. You can't just kick a man when he's down like this. I swear to God, I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left in terms of emotion.
Okay, looks like a mechanical failure. We're going to have to ask you to find a safe spot to retire.
It is. I'm not even mad. I'm emotionless. I'm numb to this kind of pain. You can't be real. Our 5th engine failure of this season. Mark, I told you after the last one at Imola, if this happened again, you're out as a race engineer. I'm getting Jeff back in. It's happening from next episode, because that's it. That's our Mexican Grand Prix prematurely over. I mean, we're already going to have a very difficult time anyway with the major rear wing damage, but you never know. We could have pulled through for maybe 1 or 2 championship points, but no. Of course, the F1 gods want to kick us when we're already down and begging for mercy. And do you want to know what component failed on us? Yep, you guessed that right. The 36% internal combustion engine. 36%. We had 3 other ICEs to choose from that were over 50. I think 2 of them were over 60% worn. But the one that was 36% going into the race weekend, the least worn, that was the one that failed. Of course. So, we are going to have to take a penalty into Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi because I don't trust the other three because they're over 50%. Well, of course, you wouldn't trust them. You'd trust one at 36, but you wouldn't trust one over 50. So, into Saudi Arabia, we're going to have to have at least one penalty, but I'm just actually speechless. I thought I was after the 4th failure, but now this has already done it. The 5th one, yeah, I have no words. No words.
What a fantastic Grand Prix that was, and an excellent win for the Haas team. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
Today was another great race and an even greater victory for Haas. Here they come now to step out onto the top of the podium. They'll be incredibly happy with today's results.
Felipe Drugovich has ended up winning that Mexican Grand Prix. Vettel in 2nd place. And then it is the 3rd place for Carlos Sainz, our old teammate in the sister Audi team. But that win for Drugovich and that 2nd place for Vettel is going to get both of them firmly into this championship fight, because it ended up being Lando Norris in 4th place, Albon got 6th. Of course, I got 0 at last place, DNF, 0 points. So going into the final 2 rounds of this championship, Norris leads the way by 1 point to Vettel. Then 2 points back are both Drugovich and Albon. And then 2 more points back is myself in 5th place. We've got 5 people who could win the championship going into the final 2 rounds. I've somehow gone from being 1st place by over 10 points, was it, to now 5th place, 5 points back. Just unbelievable. I truly cannot. If we did not have any of these failures, I would have been wiping the floor with everyone this season. This is just unprecedented, and I am just fed up. I'm fed up, and I've had enough. And Mark, you're fired. That you're hand in your P45. You're fired. I am getting Jeff back for the last 2 races because we need a bit of familiarity, a bit of stability at the ship. We're getting Jeff back in. Mark my words. Guys, if you have enjoyed the episode, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this 5th failure of the season. Oh my, what a last 2 rounds we have to come. Jeddah and then Abu Dhabi. 5 points in it, 5 drivers. It is showtime. Till then, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.